If you've ever believed that playing it safe with your money was somehow honoring God, this message will challenge everything you thought you knew. Because what if I told you that your cautious, careful approach to finances is quietly killing the calling He put inside you? You weren't designed to survive. You were created to multiply, to expand, to build something that would outlive you. But let's be honest, fear feels more spiritual than faith sometimes. It feels responsible to hide your talents and wait for the right time. Yet while you're hesitating, opportunities are slipping through your fingers, and so is the impact you were born to make. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how God's blueprint for wealth isn't about hoarding or hustling. It's about stewarding what you already have with bold, decisive faith. You'll see why some people keep making money and building businesses while others stay stuck in scarcity, blaming the world for what they're afraid to confront in themselves. So if you're tired of wondering why your finances feel stagnant, if you're ready to understand what the Bible really says about wealth, and if you're willing to take action that scares you in the best possible way, then stay with me until the end. Because this could be the moment everything changes. All money belongs to God, you're just managing His wealth. Most people think money is something they own, a badge of success they've earned by working hard. But the truth is more unsettling and more freeing. Psalm 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it." That includes every dollar in your bank account and every asset you think you possess. When you shift your mindset from ownership to stewardship, you stop gripping money like it's your only lifeline and start holding it with open hands, ready to use it for God's purposes. Imagine you're managing a business that isn't yours. You'd probably think twice before spending the company's money on something frivolous. That's exactly how God expects you to treat His resources. The parable of the talents, Matthew 25, wasn't a cute illustration. It was a sobering reminder that you will give an account for how you managed what He entrusted to you. Whether you have little or much, the assignment is the same. Multiply it for His glory. Stewardship isn't about living a life of restriction and guilt. It's about aligning your spending, investing, and generosity with a higher calling. Let's say you're considering a big purchase, like a new car or a luxury vacation. Before swiping that card, ask, would I make this choice if I remembered this is God's money, not mine? That single question can protect you from years of regret and debt, and it will sharpen your discernment faster than any budgeting app. If you're wondering how to start thinking this way, begin by dedicating everything you have back to God in prayer. Literally take a moment to say, Lord, this money, my business, my investments, they are all yours. It sounds simple, but it's a declaration that reorders your priorities. When you see yourself as a manager instead of an owner, you stop worrying about lack and start focusing on faithfulness. One practical step you can take is to create a generosity fund. Even if it's just $20 a month, set aside money specifically for blessing others. Proverbs 11:25 promises, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. That's not prosperity gospel hype. It's a kingdom principle. When you release money with purpose, you make room for God to replenish and multiply it in ways you can't predict. Remember, God never called you to be a hoarder. He called you to be a steward. And stewardship is an invitation to participate in something eternal, something that outlasts your lifetime. As you begin to embrace this mindset, you'll notice a quiet confidence replacing anxiety. And that's just the beginning of what happens when you treat money as God's property, not your possession. Comparison is the shortcut to failure. Comparison is one of the sneakiest traps when it comes to money and business. You look around and see someone your age driving a new car, running a booming company, or investing in things you don't even understand, and you start to feel behind. But Galatians 6:4 tells us, each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone, without comparing themselves to someone else. Comparison isn't harmless. It robs you of focus, gratitude, and the clarity God wants you to have about your own path. Think about this. If you were a farmer and spent all your time watching your neighbor's field, you'd miss the weeds choking your own crops. It's the same with money. Obsessing over someone else's results distracts you from stewarding what's in your hands. Maybe you're called to a slower season of building, or perhaps God is protecting you from a shortcut that would destroy your peace. Just because you see someone making money faster doesn't mean they're aligned with God's timing. Comparison also tempts you to mimic strategies that weren't designed for you. Maybe your friend started a real estate business and multiplied their income. That doesn't automatically mean real estate is your path. In Matthew 25, each servant received talents according to his ability. This means God knew exactly what each person could handle. Trying to force yourself into someone else's model can lead to frustration, debt, or burnout that was never yours to carry. One way to break free from comparison is to define success by obedience, not outcomes. You can measure progress by asking, am I being faithful with what God has given me? Instead of, am I outperforming others? For example, if you're working a 9-to-5 while building a side business, your success isn't measured by how fast it scales, but by how consistently you show up with integrity. Proverbs 14:30 says, "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." Let's get practical. Take a social media fast for a week. Stop scrolling through curated highlights that trigger insecurity. Instead, journal the wins God has brought into your life, no matter how small they seem. Maybe it's paying off a credit card, closing your first client, or simply having enough to cover your bills. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to comparison, and it shifts your mindset from lack to abundance. Remember, God didn't call you to run their race. He called you to finish yours. And when you finally stop measuring your worth by other people's milestones, you unlock a kind of freedom that money can't buy. In that space of contentment, you'll start to see exactly where He wants to take you next. Fear destroys multiplication. Fear is a silent thief that steals your potential before you even take the first step. You might feel a nudge to start a business, invest in something new, or give generously. But then fear whispers, what if you fail? What if you lose everything? In Matthew 25, the servant with 1 talent buried it because he was afraid. He wasn't lazy. He was paralyzed by the dread of disappointing his master. And ironically, the very fear meant to protect him became the reason he lost everything. Let's be honest, fear feels safe in the moment. It convinces you that doing nothing is better than risking something. But Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Faith isn't just about believing in God for your salvation. It's about trusting Him with your money, your business, and your future. When you avoid every risk, you also avoid every opportunity God wants to use to grow you. I once mentored an entrepreneur who was terrified of investing in her first product line. She'd saved $5,000 and worried it might disappear overnight. We prayed, and I asked her, what's the cost of doing nothing? She realized staying in fear meant she'd still be stuck in a job she hated a year later. So she took the leap. Within 6 months, she doubled her money. Not because it was a guarantee, but because she refused to let fear make her decisions. Fear also disguises itself as wisdom. You'll hear voices saying, be realistic or play it safe. But the Bible doesn't say, God has not given us a spirit of caution. It says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. There's a difference between stewardship and paralysis. Wise stewardship plans, prays, and moves forward. Fearful stewardship prays, plans, and hides. If you're struggling to break fear's grip, start with small acts of faith. Maybe it's investing $50 in a new skill or offering your service to someone without charging just to build confidence. Maybe it's sowing a seed into a ministry that stretches your comfort zone. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Each time you choose faith over fear, you build spiritual muscle that prepares you for greater responsibilities. The truth is, the kingdom doesn't reward the safest person in the room. It rewards the faithful one. And when you finally decide to act, even if your hands are trembling, God meets you in that place with favor you couldn't have earned on your own. Because beyond fear, there's an entirely new dimension of purpose waiting for you. Action is worship, and inaction is rebellion. Most people never think of taking action with their money as an act of worship, but it absolutely is. When you invest, build a business, or steward your resources, you're declaring, God, I trust you enough to move. James 2:17 says, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. You can pray for provision all day long, but if you never step out, your faith remains a theory instead of a testimony. Movement is proof that you actually believe God will meet you. I've seen this principle play out countless times with people who feel stuck financially. They're waiting for some supernatural confirmation before they do anything. But sometimes God is waiting for you to take the first step. Remember when Peter walked on water? Jesus didn't drag him out of the boat. Peter had to move first. The same is true with your money and your business. Action is the bridge between God's promise and your experience of abundance. When you do nothing out of fear or apathy, you're essentially telling God, I don't trust you to catch me if I fall. That's not humility. It's rebellion disguised as caution. The servant who buried his talent didn't lose it by accident. He chose inaction, and that choice spoke louder than any words. God isn't looking for perfect execution. He's looking for obedient hearts, willing to risk imperfection in pursuit of His purpose. If you've been sitting on an idea, writing a book, launching a course, starting an investment, ask yourself what's really stopping you. Is it lack of information or just fear masquerading as wisdom? Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty." Diligence means preparing, but it also means moving forward when you're prepared enough. You don't need every detail to take the first step. A simple action you can take this week is to set a deadline for your next move. If God has been nudging you to do something, put it on the calendar and commit. Whether it's opening a business account, launching your website, or meeting with a mentor, pick a date and do it. Faith becomes real the moment it touches your calendar and your bank account. Remember, God rewards movement. Even if you stumble, He honors the heart that steps out in faith more than the one that hides behind excuses. And once you taste what it feels like to take action as worship, you'll never go back to playing it safe again. Multiplication is the default setting of the kingdom. Multiplication isn't an optional upgrade in God's kingdom, it's the default. From Genesis to Revelation, everything He touches grows. Genesis 1:28 says, "Be fruitful and multiply." That wasn't just a command for families. It's a principle for every area of life. Your money, your business, your influence. They were designed to expand when you steward them with faith. If you're stuck in maintenance mode, you're living below the standard God set for you. Think about it. A single seed doesn't produce one piece of fruit. It creates trees that generate hundreds of pieces of fruit year after year. That's how God wired creation to work. When you invest in something, whether it's a business idea or a ministry project, you're planting seeds that can multiply far beyond your initial effort. The problem is, most people settle for addition when God is inviting them into multiplication. One reason multiplication feels so intimidating is because it requires trust. It forces you to believe that what you sow won't return empty. 2 Corinthians 9:6 reminds us, "Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously." This isn't just about tithing. It's about how you allocate every dollar. If you hold back out of fear, you shrink your harvest before it ever has a chance to grow. I've watched entrepreneurs build businesses that not only replaced their income but funded missions, fed families, and created jobs. That's multiplication in action. Maybe for you, it's investing in real estate or learning a new skill that opens doors to higher income. The method doesn't matter nearly as much as the mindset. God honors any vessel willing to multiply what He's placed in their hands. If you want to activate this principle, start by identifying areas where you've been in survival mode. Are you just covering bills without a plan to expand? Are you saving but never investing? Multiplication requires intentional action. Even small steps, like setting up an automated investment or creating a secondary income stream, send a signal to heaven that you're ready for more. Never forget, you serve a God who multiplies loaves and fish, who turned water into wine, and who took a small band of disciples and built a global movement. That same God is eager to multiply what you entrust to Him, if you'll dare to plant the seeds. Your money is a test, and you're being watched. Most people don't realize that every dollar they spend or save is actually part of a spiritual test. Luke 16:11 says, "If you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches?" Money isn't just a resource. It's a mirror reflecting your priorities, discipline, and faith. And whether you have a little or a lot, God is watching how you handle it. Your financial decisions are shaping the doors He will open in your future. It's easy to think that testing only happens during hardship, but abundance is a test too. When you get a bonus, a raise, or unexpected income, what you do next reveals your heart. Do you immediately spend it on temporary pleasures? Or do you ask God how He wants you to use it? Proverbs 3:9 says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops." That means you should be intentional even in seasons of increase. I once coached a man who received an inheritance he never expected. Instead of seeking counsel or praying, he bought a luxury car and renovated his house. A year later, the money was gone, and he was in more debt than before. Money didn't change his habits, it magnified them. Remember, the test isn't whether you can handle wealth in theory, it's what you actually do when it lands in your hands. Testing also happens in small moments. The choice to tithe when finances are tight, the discipline to budget instead of impulse spending, the courage to invest in something that stretches your faith. These decisions might seem insignificant, but they're qualifying you for greater influence. Think of it like God's classroom. He's preparing you for bigger assignments by watching how you steward what you already have. If you're wondering how to pass the test, start by tracking where your money goes. Awareness is half the battle. Then, set clear boundaries for spending and generosity. For example, you might decide that every time you receive income, a percentage goes to giving and another to investments. Systems help you stay faithful, especially when emotions want to take over. And here's the beautiful part. God isn't testing you to catch you failing. He's testing you so He can promote you. When He sees faithfulness in small things, He entrusts you with more. And that's how you step into a life where money isn't just a blessing. It becomes a testimony of trust and purpose. Faithfulness unlocks more, but scarcity will cost you everything. Faithfulness is the currency of increase in God's economy. In Matthew 25, the servants who multiplied their talents heard, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Notice that He didn't say successful servant. He said faithful. That means showing up, taking risks, and stewarding money with integrity even when you don't see immediate results. When you stay faithful, God can trust you with more because you've proven you won't waste His resources. On the flip side, a scarcity mindset is like a slow poison. It convinces you to hoard, hide, and protect what you have instead of planting it in faith. Proverbs 11:24 says, "One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty." Scarcity doesn't just limit your finances. It shrinks your vision and kills your creativity. When you hold back out of fear, you cut yourself off from the flow of God's provision. I've mentored people who refuse to invest in themselves because they're afraid to lose money. Ironically, their refusal to invest guarantees they stay stuck. Whether it's buying a course, hiring a coach, or giving generously, faithful action signals to God that you're ready for more. Remember, you can't outgive Him. Every seed sown in faith is a setup for future harvest. If you want to build a faithfulness habit, start small. Pick one area where you'll stop operating from scarcity. Maybe it's setting up a recurring donation to a ministry. Maybe it's committing to invest a percentage of your income each month, even if it feels uncomfortable. The point isn't the amount, it's the obedience. God multiplies what you release, not what you cling to. One practical exercise is to write down every time you sense fear holding you back financially. Then counter that fear with a scripture promise. For example, when you feel anxious about giving, declare 2 Corinthians 9:8. God is able to bless you abundantly. Speaking truth over fear breaks its grip and strengthens your resolve to stay faithful. When you realize that faithfulness always unlocks more, you stop negotiating with scarcity. You start to expect increase because you know it's the natural result of obedience. And in that place of expectancy, you'll find yourself prepared for blessings you never imagined. Stewardship. Today shapes generational wealth. Tomorrow, most people think stewardship is just about paying bills on time or avoiding debt. But in God's kingdom, stewardship has a much bigger purpose, shaping a legacy that outlives you. Proverbs 13:22 says, "A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children." That's not just about money. It's about values, habits, and faith that build generational wealth. Every financial choice you make today sets the stage for what your family will experience tomorrow. Think about this. If your children watched how you handle money, what would they learn? Would they see fear or faith, scarcity or generosity? Your example teaches louder than any lecture. I've met people who grew up believing money was always a struggle because they never saw anyone in their family use it as a tool for impact. But you have a chance to break that cycle and model something different. Generational wealth isn't built by accident. It comes from small, consistent actions, like budgeting, investing, and giving, that compound over time. Maybe you start by setting up a college fund for your kids or buying assets instead of liabilities. Or perhaps you document the lessons God is teaching you about money so your family can stand on your shoulders instead of starting from scratch. One powerful strategy is to create a legacy plan. This isn't just a will, it's a vision for how your resources will serve God's purposes long after you're gone. It might include charitable giving, business succession, or investment accounts that grow for future generations. When you plan with intention, you turn money into a lasting testimony of faith. If you feel overwhelmed by this idea, remember, God never asked you to build a legacy alone. James 1:5 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, and it will be given." Pray for guidance. Seek wise counsel. Take one step at a time. It's not about perfection, it's about progress anchored in purpose. And here's the beauty. When you steward today with eternity in mind, you set in motion blessings you may never see with your own eyes. But heaven sees, and your faithfulness will echo through generations as a testimony of what God can do with a willing heart. You've spent too long believing that playing it safe was the most spiritual choice you could make. But today you've seen the truth. God never called you to bury what He entrusted to you. He called you to multiply it. So let me ask you, what's the one step you've been avoiding because it felt too risky? What dream have you silenced because you were afraid to fail? Imagine where your life, your business, and your family could be a year from now if you decided to trust Him completely with your money. What doors would open if you treated every dollar as a seed for something eternal instead of something to protect? Write in the comments, "I trust God with my business and my wealth," and watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. And what will it cost you and those you love if you keep doing nothing? If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Consider supporting our ministry through the link in the description so we can keep sharing God's wisdom about money and purpose with people around the world. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the insights that could transform your finances and your faith.